I love it. Backstage, we were talking about education. Little known fact, Woz was a teacher for 8 years.
Well, that's correct. I didn't let press near because young children are so important to me, and truth is the apex of all good in the way I think, and that I try to teach young people. Just be truthful, always about things. You won't have two stories to tell. And I didn't want the press near students because they'd be reading things in the press. This is not what really happened. You know, they'd see sort of the non-truthful side of the press to sell papers. I didn't want that happening, so I had no press inside there. And for 8 years, yeah, I taught 5th graders for 200 hours per year how to own a computer, how to use a computer, how to maintain it and upgrade it, how to carry it with you everywhere, and how to do all your homework, make your homework look good, impress your teacher. If your teacher's impressed, you'll feel impressed about doing good academic work, and also how to get on networks was important. So I did that for, taught for 8 years. Yeah, I got up to where I was teaching 7 days a week even. 5th graders, 6th to 9th graders, classes of teachers on weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so...
Because I wanted to be a teacher my whole life. I mean, this was not like I thought up, well, this is something I can do. I wanted, when I was in 6th grade, I told my dad, I'm going to be an electrical engineer like you. And second, I want to be a 5th grade teacher because teachers are so important in our lives. So I had kept that goal in me. In psychology classes, I always paid attention to cognitive development and the child's mind, and always thinking about how it develops, and could a computer ever go along those paths. But I really wanted to be a teacher my whole life, so I did it.
And you helped really probably spark that passion in kids, in really following their passion and careers, and how technology can be very creative.
Well, you've hit it, because one of the things I realized was it was less important teaching knowledge. Here's how you do something. Here's how you program a certain thing, or here is how you space things and use color appropriately and not inappropriately. Teaching them design styles, that's knowledge. But it was much more important to make the class fun, so they wanted to learn. They wanted to be a part of class, and they saw that, oh my gosh, this learning and the stuff I can do with it is actually fun, educational. I can take it places in my life. So I came up with the rule that knowledge is less important than motivation. I look back in my own life, and almost everything I did that was great was something I wanted to do but had not studied or ever done before or been trained in. But I would simply sit down and say, how would I write the book or develop the science to build this type of product or this type of project or a floppy disk, you know, computers, video, all that stuff.
Yeah. And so that's something that we sort of...
But it's wanting to do it is the drive. You won't fail if you're smart and you want it.
But feeling that you can too, and feeling empowered that just because you didn't get an A, like every time, that you're still good at it.
What do you mean? In STEM subjects? I got all A's. I got math awards in my schools.
Oh no, I'm sure. No, I meant the kids that you teach. Like,
oh, the kids I teach. Yes. Well, I don't like the idea of grading. I'd like every single student to be able to progress, and it's a lot easier with a small class of 6 students or 17 students than it is with 30. I found that with 30, they can all get lost and not be paying attention, and I couldn't keep them all in line. And then I found that, oh yeah, teachers would much rather teach 30 kids poorly than 20 kids well because they get paid more money.
Yeah.
That was a shame. And you could have a vote. California was 50th in the nation in class size. Still is. And 47th in dollars per student and 43rd in computer student. It goes back to a proposition called Proposition 13 on property taxes. But in a city like Cupertino, where Apple is and has been known for education my whole life, you could have an election to have more property taxes to benefit the schools. So I paid to send postcards to everybody in Cupertino, and we got 64% of the vote, and it failed. Because the law said you had to have a supermajority, two-thirds, and only 1/3 of the people have kids in schools. Very hard to accomplish. We failed again the next year in Cupertino, then we passed it in Los Gatos, where I live, and then Cupertino. So those two cities, for 20-some years, have had a little more money than the other cities in this Bay Area, and if you drive by those districts, you'll see renovated buildings and new stadiums. I don't know if you'll see smarter students.
Another thing that we were talking about back there was AI, and sort of the promise of AI, and so many different things. Obviously in education, one, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I started having thoughts about, of course, education's been such a big part of my life, my wife's life. I started thinking about what could we do to get to 1 teacher per student? We brought computers in the schools, and it didn't wind up being 1 teacher per student. We have massive online courses, and it doesn't wind up being you know, one teacher per student that lets the student go whatever directions they want to at whatever speed they have to. Our laws we don't give money to kids to go to school, and of course we cut it off at 12th grade. I don't know how we arbitrarily picked 12th grade, but we don't give them money to get an education to a certain level. We only give them money to have a certain number of years and hours they have to go to school. You know, and that's sort of wrong. We should say education is what you get, how far you get, and here's the definition. You can go as long as it takes you or as short as it takes you, and it's paid for. Yeah, and then I thought for education, here I discovered that large class size was the biggest detriment. Could we ever get to one teacher per student? Well, the computers haven't quite gotten to that level yet. They would have to have a personality. They'd have to look at you. They'd have to like you. They'd have to have feelings. They'd have to know what jokes you like in your family and what's going on, and look at your face and really be like your best friend, know your heart and soul better than humans do. Could that happen someday if we had truly artificial intelligent machines that thought for themselves? Could they become that person that becomes your best friend and guide and lets you go off in the things you love to do and lets another student go off in different directions because they have a different teacher, one teacher per student?
I love your idea about one teacher per student. How long do you think it would take for us to get there?
Well, obviously we can't afford one teacher that's a real human.
No, I mean the artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence. Machines would evolve and come up to where they are thinking and operating like humans and working in the human world that you can't tell the difference is the Turing test. That's the first step. But they'd have to be something more to have a hold on you. And what gave me this idea is you look at, especially a lot of young people walk around and they're just looking at their phones. This has become the most important thing in my world, and I wouldn't give it up, and my brain goes into patterns that are similar to falling in love. Could this be something I would trust even more than humans? Could this be my one teacher someday? And maybe.
So
I don't know.
Yeah, we see the possibility already with their phones and their tablets. So that kids getting there probably isn't that far. It's sort of the system then, and building.
Yeah. How important is this to me? And
you said earlier that teachers in education is such an important part, and I don't think there's anybody that would disagree with you, but what would be your advice to teachers who are trying to inspire that creativity and motivation in students instead of the focus on knowledge?
Well, if you're really inspired that way, do your teaching outside of the academic structure. The structure we have, the problem is we brought great devices, computers, into, let's say, a system that had problems. The throat of the problems with the system, every student in class learning the same things at the same time. There's no room to adapt to individual issues. There's just no time for that. So all I can say is find a few students that you'd like to teach privately on your own after school if you can afford to, like I could. That's probably about the best I can say. Always be trying to incorporate fun things. The trouble is, as a teacher, you're not often in charge of your own textbooks. Your principal tells you, here are the textbooks, and you make a contract with your principal. I will do these pages on Monday, these pages on Tuesday, these pages on Wednesday, and if the students sort of didn't get it one day, maybe they had a big field trip, they were talking with each other and didn't get it, you aren't allowed to go back and kind of redo it, to get the learning done better. So it's all in the system. It's way up above individual teachers that, for fixes that I would recommend. And I don't want to recommend fixes that anybody else could recommend, because there's a million people as smart as me about this, and they could easily offer the same suggestions I would offer. That's why I look to something very unusual and different that doesn't exist. A computer that can have a conversation with you and understand you and like you and appreciate you could be that teacher. That doesn't exist yet. We don't have computers that are really truly conscious. So that's just something that doesn't exist, so it could work. I'm not saying it would work, but maybe it could work, to getting all these students coming out so creative, having their ideas and be able to implement them and not feeling that they're behind others and that their role in the world is less than someone else's.